I feel like it was a nervous breakdown, honestly. I
Yeah.
mean, I do. I think that really just because nothing huge happened. I had a little fender bender,
Right, right. Yep.
and that's all that it caused it. And I couldn't leave my house.
Mhm.
I couldn't be around people. I had panic attacks that I thought I was dying.
Yeah.
I mean, it felt like I was dying. I just I wouldn't be able to breathe. I couldn't. I had one so bad that I had to pull over on the side of the road, and the only way to get any kind of relief was to scream at the top of my lungs. Like I would feel this. It would be building and building and building and building, and to get it out, I would have to scream at the top of my lungs. Like it's the craziest. I'd never felt anything like that before.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Everything's Okay, a mental health podcast brought to you by the one and only Crazy Ant Media. Today, we're doing something a little different, and I'm very excited about it because it's going to be more intimate, and I feel like a lot of people will be able to connect with it and possibly start bridging that gap when it comes to conversations specifically with family members. So this subgenre of Everything's Okay podcast is going to be family sessions, and I'm super excited and pumped to have this conversation today because the one and only my mother, Connie Hannah, is on the podcast, and we'll be talking about, just basically anything and everything when it comes to mental health and how we started taking it seriously and just all of these different things. This specific thing is very anxiety driven. We are both nervous about it, and I know you are as well, but you went to a happy place. You went to the beach, and I know you always love seeing the water and seeing the beach. So I'm glad we were able to set this up, and I was honestly surprised that you said that you would be open to doing it.
I was a little nervous. It's hard to talk about it because a lot of it feels like mistakes I've made and things, but the only way to kind of heal from the things that you've done and gone through is to address them directly and to be honest.
Yes.
And if it can help somebody else, then I'm all for it.
Oh, most definitely, most definitely. And yeah, I mean, we have very transparent conversations, and I feel like not a lot of
We
people
do.
in each other's family realizes how open and honest you can be, even if it's with something you feel like might. You're just talking about your feelings, and you never want to cross a certain line, and you never want to make the other person you don't want to touch a trigger point, basically.
Right. You're not
And
trying to blame anybody for anything. It's
right.
more of,
You're just like, this
yeah,
is how I felt in this experience, though it might not be your fault, but all of these different things. So yeah, it's very interesting because some people, yeah, they don't feel like they can talk about that stuff specifically with their parents because, everybody has childhood trauma and everybody
oh,
comes
yeah.
from that type of background where sometimes the parents don't even realize it was trauma until the child expresses that, right? So it's something
Exactly.
that's very interesting, especially for, people who may not have good relationships with their parents, or if, for example, people who may start be trying to have good relationships with their parents now, but feel like they can't talk about what they went through as a child. Like for me and my situation with dad right now, I
Yeah.
always want to speak my truth specifically on this podcast, but I always somewhat feel bad about it because, we're mending that relationship right now. So it's a
Yeah.
very interesting situation. And I mean, I know, an amazing thing just happened to you this past year where you just found your biological father. I've never really talked about it on any public platform, but you grew up with a father that you didn't know was not your father until a certain age, right? So it was always kind of a mystery, and you had actually given up hope on finding your real dad. So when this actually happened, it was such an amazing thing, and I was so happy that it happened for you because this was something that was you were carrying with you for the majority of your life. So I mean, talk about that a little bit. What was it like to actually find your dad and just be able to have a parent that you felt like you could get close to? Because I know my grandmother, your mother, can be a little strong-willed, we should say. So it can be challenging at some times
Yes.
because let's admit it, we're all a little stubborn. So, I mean, it's a little hard, but
Yeah.
in general, what was it like to finally feel like, you had a parent you could have these conversations with?
Well, at first it wasn't, I was just so glad to get answers
Right.
that, I had been told one thing until I was like 9 or 12. And then I was told, okay, he's not your dad, it's someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's what I was led to believe until I was about 18
Right.
and decided I wanted to find him.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always told that, he didn't want you. He knew about you. He did not want you. He was married, had a family. His wife was pregnant at the same time. Mom was pregnant with me. So that's the story I was told, that
Mm-hmm.
he just didn't want anything to do with me. And I've always carried it. I didn't realize how important and what a big thing it was in my life until I found him, and people from my past, like even friends from elementary school, remembered, that's so great. You've got those answers. I know that's always bothered you, and it's just so funny. That's like, they all remember that,
Right.
it's kind of, they feel like it's part of their story almost.
Mm-hmm.
But finding him, when actually, I did an Amazon, or not Amazon, goodness, Ancestry.com,
Yes.
one of those DNA tests. My
Mm-hmm.
husband got that for me, and I had done it probably 5 years before and had never, when I first did it, I was excited. I thought I might, I was going to find somebody that I'm related to on his side. But then nothing really happened for like 3 or 4 years, and I just kind of quit looking at it, quit paying attention to it. And then last year, a lady reached out to me to tell me that, hey, we matched on Ancestry.com. It looks like we are probably first cousins, because it basically tells you how closely you're related, and that you're probably first cousins because you're this closely related.
Right.
And when I talked to her, I told her who my mom was, told her who my dad had, the latest edition of who my dad was.
Mm-hmm.
And he's her half brother. So within 24 hours, I was actually speaking to him on the phone.
That's so crazy. Like,
So,
I remember it was such like a catch-22 situation because
it was so crazy.
because I mean, I remember being like middle school or high school, and you did hire the private investigator to try to figure it out. You hired like two of them, right? Like,
yeah, and they couldn't find him, and he was actually an hour and a half away.
Yeah,
the whole
that's
time.
so crazy. But it was just like such a monumental thing in all of our lives, because it was something that, it's I feel like it's generational baggage, because
Sure.
growing up with the parents that you did, they were loving at times, right? But it was challenging also at some times. So I mean, as someone who grew up in that type of environment and then figured out that, this is not your real dad, when can you place a time where you felt like you could start feeling depression or anxiety, or feel like, that you weren't wanted? Because I feel like all of us in our family at some point in time feels like that for no reason sometimes.
Yeah.
But do you remember when you started feeling, because you can identify it now, right? What depression and
really
anxiety is, but like
I can really identify where it starts.
yeah. Like, so do you know, like, around what age you feel like you started having these anxiety or depression like spells, I guess you could say?
I was 8 or 9.
Yeah.
My mom was, she was with who I thought was my dad, and then
Right.
they split up, and then she got with someone else, and he was very abusive. He would beat her basically every weekend. It was a weekend thing, and destroy our house, and and say ugly things to everybody. That's basically how I found out that who I thought my dad wasn't, because he wanted to let me know that my mom was a whore,
Right.
and that my dad wasn't who I thought it was. So that's a great way to find out.
Yeah.
And so I can remember at 9 writing letters to God at night asking to let me die in my sleep.
Yeah.
Just because I didn't feel wanted. My mom was never lovey-dovey. I don't remember her ever playing with us or laughing with us or or anything like that, just enjoying having kids.
Yeah.
And so that was hard. That was really hard.
Yeah, and I think what you did, as a parent to try to flip the switch on that is try to over shower us with love and affection, because there are three of us, four technically. Our brother Andrew passed away from SIDS when he was a month old. But the three of us who are still together and still holding strong, I feel like, of course, we had our teenage years, and you're still going through some teenage years with the siblings. But I know, like, there's so many good memories that we've had that pop up on like Facebook timeline all the time, and like the Facebook memories, like specifically the ones that popped up the other day, and I think you might have shared it, was it was one of the times we went to the canal, and like all of us were like, it might have been for like a 4th of July, because we always went downtown for the 4th. And just like you would make sure that we had experiences and like happy times, because we never really had a lot of money. It wasn't like we were rolling in it or anything, but you always made sure we were either, every summer we were able to go to the zoo, or every summer we were able to go to the children's museum. And I feel like that was really impactful in each one of our lives, and was able to create happy memories that I feel like you were kind of not able to have as a child. So I feel like, we talk about this all the time with Levi specifically, is, you try to do better than what your parents did. And it's hard to top what you did, because I feel like, it was the majority of my stuff from growing up is kind of like a victim of circumstance type of thing, just because of the revenue and the funds just weren't there. So, we had to do what we had to do. So, but other than that, like, I feel like, when it comes to showering your child with love and with like being able to show your emotions, because, there's a lot of specifically men that don't show their emotions to their child. Because they want to stand tall and hold that burly front and, lead by example, or so on and so forth. So I just wanted to, put that out there and let you know that you did an amazing job. Of course.
That means a lot, because, I look back and see all the things that I could have done better and I did wrong. And so that means a lot.
Of course. I feel like, is that just human nature? I feel like it is. You always feel like, you could, it's never enough. Like, even with like, with the stuff I'm doing with Crazy and pursuing my dreams and my passions and stuff, like I talk about this all the time with Dustin, and it's like, I feel like I'm never able to sit down and chill until I reach a certain point, but I have to realize, that certain point that's in my head will quote unquote never be reached, because that is something that I feel like is, I don't know. I thought about it for a long time, in the sense of, once I reach this certain point of success, then I'll feel different. But that's never how it is, because the wealth and money will come, but you're going to still have all of this baggage and all this other, bullshit that is inside of you. You still got to
deal with that first.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's very interesting to try to navigate everything, but it's definitely something that I feel like is human nature, because people never... I don't want to say people never feel like they're enough, but they always feel like they could be doing more, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So it's definitely one of those things, and it's honestly crazy to see where we were to where we are now, and like, I never thought growing up that we would make that transition into moving to a different state. I felt like that.
Never.
That was a big part of all three of our lives. Speaking of the children and your guys' life too, because you moved around from like Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee when you were growing up, but throughout those three states, they were relatively home because you had family there and all these different things. But when we moved to Mississippi, we were like, It was crazy the way they did it,
We
guys.
knew no one.
They knew no one. They literally rented this house off of a fucking website, and
Craigslist.
like, yeah, like they had never seen the house besides pictures.
Oh.
Like, it was such a leap, and like, so that's what encourages me to take leaps now. You know, I
Yeah,
should be
you
like,
can't be afraid.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, don't be afraid of this situation, because remember what they did with, bringing down 2 kids
Yeah.
and 2 dogs and like all this
Two
shit. Like,
dogs, a cat, like 2 guinea pigs.
dude, it was
And we
so
had
freaking
neither of
crazy.
us had jobs really. I didn't have a job, and he was selling like uh, what is that? I guess
Right? Wasn't he still kind of
vacation
doing?
spaces.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what it
vacation
was.
spaces in Hawaii.
That's so
So
crazy.
like there was very little money. We slept on an air mattress on the floor
Yeah,
for 3 months,
yeah,
but it does give you, when you do something like that, it's like we can make it through anything.
yeah, exactly. I mean,
No matter
there's
what happens, we will figure it out because that's what we do.
exactly, because I mean, those speed bumps, they do, like, they are terrifying, speed bumps, but they do make you realize that you can overcome things, right? It's
Yes.
nothing is like really as end of the world esque as we like to think that is. So
Yeah.
which it is very terrifying, and that's what I'm trying to talk about with Emily. Be like, yeah, this may not have all turned out the way we wanted to, but look, right now we're still alive, we're still breathing, and we're still being successful in chasing our dreams and chasing what we want to do for a career and like all of these different things. So it's like, if we work together and keep each other mentally sound, like we can get through things.
That's the most important thing,
Yeah.
to be a real team. I never ever felt like that in a relationship until I met Levi.
Yeah.
And it took a long time to feel like that because I didn't have an example of that.
Right.
I hadn't experienced that. So it was a real adjustment. And I know he'll tell you that moving down here away from everyone that we knew, just having to, it was us against the world
Right.
kind of thing, that it was the best thing to do for our marriage. It really was.
I think so too, because I don't want to say there was bad influences, but I feel like you run with the same crowds, and
Yep.
you try to change as a person, but you don't want to change because you love
You're comfortable.
you're comfortable with the crowd you're with, and like all this different stuff. So yeah, I really think all of us have grown like as individuals because of that move. And I mean, I
Because of
used
it,
to
yeah.
like, I don't want to say, I how I felt about it. I was very mad at first, and like that whole first year I didn't go down with you guys and
Yeah.
stayed with grandma, and it was just such a crazy experience because like, in the sense of still having family but not having the family I grew up with, and
Yeah.
that whole dynamic, it was very interesting, and I learned a lot as a person, and like I went through a lot of trials and tribulations in that time period to where I could be like, okay, this is what this is kind of what I want to stay away from. This is like something maybe I want to lean a little bit more towards, and all of these
Yeah.
different things. So it was definitely an error, or a period of trial and error, that I feel like a lot of people could learn from. So it is very interesting.
Yeah. Sometimes being thrown in the deep end of the pool, it just shows you what you're made of and who you are.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
For sure.
Well, and like I would say, we always had these depressional bouts and anxiety. I feel like literally all 5 of us that grew up in that household, we all experienced the same things. So it's always been hard for all of us, especially when we didn't communicate well. And
Yeah.
like I feel like that's probably what a lot of the stuff was, when I mean, as I said earlier, you're still going through it now with the teenagers you still have at home, the siblings, and it's hard to be able to identify a certain thing when you're in that moment, because you can go, you're arguing, and then like you can step back and think about it for like a half hour and be like, oh, she was anxious about this, or they're going through
Yes.
this, and so it's hard to do that in the moment, but it's also a gift to be able to recognize it, because when I was younger, like, and we were going through things, like we weren't able to recognize it when we were going through it.
Yeah.
So like I felt like we really didn't start taking anxiety and depression seriously until honestly just a couple years ago, when we were in Mississippi and
Yeah.
being able to talk about these things. And I don't want to call it a break for you. But at that point in time when I was still living with you in Mississippi, and you had that episode, I guess the respectful
Yeah,
term.
I feel like it was a nervous breakdown, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, I do. I think that really just because nothing huge happened. I had a little fender bender,
Right. Right. Yep.
and that's all that it caused it. And I couldn't leave my house.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't be around people. I had panic attacks that I thought I was dying.
Yeah.
I mean, it felt like I was dying. I just I wouldn't be able to breathe. I couldn't. I had one so bad that I had to pull over on the side of the road, and the only way to get any kind of relief was to scream at the top of my lungs. Like I would feel this. It would be building and building and building and building, and to get it out, I would have to scream at the top of my lungs. Like it's the craziest. I'd never felt anything like that before.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was crazy or dying.
Hmm.
You know, and it's from years and years and years of just not dealing with things. You shove things down.
Yeah, I mean, you've always heard bottle it up, for men, it's man up, like push it down, like all of that. But yeah, I feel like that's when we started taking it seriously. And in that specific instance, I didn't know the severity of it until I think we went out, me and Levi went out to get donuts one time in the morning. And
Yep.
you were having a hard time just being around other people in general. So that was the time that I realized that, okay, this is serious and this is a real thing. And then that's when I started looking inside myself as well to see like different triggers and like different emotions, and being able to, identify, okay, when your chest gets tight, yeah, that's called anxiety. So it's different things like that. When you feel like there's a boulder like just sitting on you, yeah, that's what that is. So I mean, it was very interesting because you have had, different bouts with suicidal thoughts, and you have had a few attempts on your timeline. So to be able to, I mean, first of all, just want to say I'm so thankful that you're still here, because you know that I have also had my bouts with everything, and I had my attempt, or at least almost attempt, and that whole situation. I was so thankful that you were able to come up and be with me with that. But that, I feel like, because we didn't start taking it seriously until, you were in your basically early to mid 40s. So like when you were going through your other, because I believe, now correct me if I'm wrong, you had 2 other attempts before that, right?
I've had 2 attempts total.
Okay, so it was the time after the Marines thing, and then the time.
Well, it was actually after Andrew.
Oh, okay. I don't know why. I think their timeline's messed up right there. But it's very interesting because what did you chalk those up to being, and did you ever think about starting to take mental health seriously? Because after you do attempt your attempts, you have to be put in a facility and go to classes and groups and all this stuff. So was it just something when you were going through that process, like in the facility and going to groups and stuff, was it just something that you felt like you just had to get through to get out? Or, I mean, did you take any of it seriously at the time, or how did that go?
The first time, I was 15.
Yeah, it was in the 90s.
It was 91. Andrew had, he lived for a month, and then it was probably a month after he passed away.
Right.
And I couldn't do it anymore. I just couldn't do it. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be here. I wanted to be with my baby. I was tired of having to be the middle person between Mom and Larry, which was Andrew's dad, because they, that was a whole thing. And it was I just wanted to sleep. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to rest. I wanted people to leave me alone, and then when I went, I just was like, I can't do this here. Whatever they needed to hear for me to get out is what I said. Like the normal stay was like a month. 6 weeks, and I was there 7 days.
Damn.
Because I really just told them whatever they wanted to hear, what I should say. I mean,
Right. Exactly.
When you're in a situation,
Yeah, you're just you're trying to mind your P's and your Q's and try to get out of the situation as quick as possible. I mean, I feel like I somewhat did that, but I was kind of still in shock when I got out. So it was kind of like that whole experience for me was just like, it was just eye opening in the sense of, we can't get to this point again because I don't want to be back here.
No,
So
yeah,
that was my biggest thing. But then after, because the second attempt was, when all three of us were alive and you had all
yeah.
three of your kids. So, I mean, did you feel somewhat the same feeling as you did when you were 15, or was it like a different thing? Because I know you and I have
This was
talked about it.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was different for sure. I just felt like I couldn't do anything right as
Right.
your mother. I
Mm-hmm.
felt like you guys would be better off without me.
Mm-hmm.
And because of my emotional shit and how I was still trying to deal with things, and just thought, you know what, they'll be better off without me. And that's that delusional brain. I thought they will be better off with their dads, which looking back, I know that is 100% not true.
Hell yeah.
But when you are in that mindset, that's all I could think of. And
Right.
when I woke up in the hospital, they had to keep sedating me because every time I woke up, I would rip everything out of my arms. I was mad that I had lived.
Yeah.
Like, it was really bad. Yeah, they had to strap me down and sedate me, and because I was just so mad. But then once I was moved out of the actual ICU and they put you in like a treatment center or whatever, it was kind of the same thing. I dealt with a little bit, like I finally came to terms with the fact that I had been molested as a kid and that I had a date rape situation in my 20s, that I had always, it was my fault.
Right.
Like, I was 9 years old and I enjoyed the attention I was getting.
Mm-hmm.
So isn't it my fault?
Yeah.
But you're 9, so you're dealing with that. And then, in my 20s, I had a situation where I went out and I played pool with a guy. I had one drink and I don't remember anything else after that.
Wow.
But I went. I went. I had a drink. I didn't drive myself. And so.
And so you felt like that was your fault.
Yeah, I've spent most of my life not liking myself very much.
Yeah.
So, but then when I had that break, I didn't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I couldn't do it, but I also didn't want to be somewhere where I couldn't leave. The whole being locked in, I can't do it.
Yeah, I mean,
But
it's terrifying.
It's awful. And so what I did was I went to a place that's called Sycamore,
Mm-hmm.
and it's intensive therapy. It's outpatient, but it's intensive. I went from like 9 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon every day for about 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And just was able to see why I do the things I do, why I feel like when I do something, where does that action come from? Oh, well, it's probably because you've got this, this trauma from your childhood. I can see how it all relates now.
Right.
And then that helps me to deal with that.
Yeah.
Because I'm going, okay, don't respond as a hurt, broken person.
Right.
Respond as a person who gets what the real situation is.
Mm-hmm.
You're really not being attacked, or it's not really how you see it.
Yeah.
It does help, but it takes work. I have to work at it every day.
Yeah, it is. It's something that is it's hard to do because we, as human beings, we are emotional people. And when we hear something we don't like, we respond to that with emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't respond to that with sensibility. And so it's very hard to be able to, try to identify that and flip the switch to where you approach it like, okay, let me take a second or two before I respond or before I do this.
Right.
Like it's so fucking hard in the moment, but
Yep.
it's something that is like, once you like realize that and once you're able to identify that, it's so important to do because it does help you in the long run. And it does
It really
help you
does.
like even at the end of the day when you're going through and thinking about your day, you're not harboring on that situation that you could have
Yes.
potentially overreacted to. It's something
Yeah.
that is very, very hard. And I mean, we should say, obviously, in the beginning, when everybody's listening, they know that, you had some standoff parents. So that's why you had a baby at 15. So you
Yeah.
could feel the love that someone, you wanted to feel loved and you wanted to
did.
put love into someone.
I really did. I mean, I got pregnant on purpose because I wanted a baby.
Yeah.
I wanted to do it right because I felt like I wasn't mothered correct, well.
Right.
I mean, I wanted my baby to know how loved he was
Yeah.
and how much he was wanted. and I wasn't gonna put him in the situations that my mom had put us in.
Right. Exactly.
And so, and to a 15-year-old, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, exactly.
you're a freshman. Let's get pregnant.
It's fine. But yeah, and we should say too, like grandma, she grew up always feeling like she wasn't loved. So
Right.
it's what we were talking about
It is
earlier with
generational.
it's the
Yeah.
generational trauma that continues following each and every one of us through the ages. So it's important to try to change that narrative, but it's so damn hard to do because
It is.
there's no rule book, there's no guidebook, there's no handbook on how to do all of this. So it's very important just to be able to try to identify things because
Yeah.
when you don't identify things and let things just pass on like that, I feel like then that's the problem. You start to just think everything's okay and you're not paying attention to your child who is actually going through their own shit.
Their own stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
for
very
sure.
important. So I think, it's nice that you and I have this transparency and that's why I wanted to talk to you on the podcast because I feel like there's not enough examples like this.
Yeah.
We are very open about everything and we've been through a lot of shit together because as we like to say, you had me when you were 20
Yeah.
and we grew up together basically.
We did.
That's
We
what it
definitely
feels
did.
like.
We
So
did grow up together.
it's like it's such a crazy experience and there's something that I was your rainbow baby because of the passing of Andrew and like I
You
feel
were.
like we have a special bond that I feel like we've been through a lot of stuff that
Yeah.
the people that are around us now they don't necessarily can identify with because they weren't there. And
They
that
just don't know the struggles we had in the beginning,
Yeah,
and it's like that for the littles, because they were so little
yeah,
when Levi came into our life,
yeah,
and you and I mean, it was us. We were the team.
yeah.
There wasn't a guy that was my teammate. It was you,
Yeah. Which is so crazy
and
because like there was, I love that you called them the Littles because I was just thinking about their nickname the other day. That's so great. But it's so crazy because we had different times because I feel like you were trying to find the right person for you and the right person to be a good at least fatherly figure as well
yeah,
because growing up before a certain situation that we don't necessarily have to dive into, dad was always there and
yeah,
it was very it's a very good relationship, but then
yes,
like once we got to a certain point like there was a step back to where like I needed someone to put a void or to step into that void,
yes,
which was very important. So while there was like the one specifically I remember, and you guys were broken up when it happened, but I'm talking about Scott and like
oh yeah,
how that was a good dynamic and everything was good. Y'all didn't work out, but you were still friends. But
yes,
then he died.
yeah,
He died kind of unexpectedly. So that was something that I feel like would have been something good to bring up because I don't think, even though you guys didn't work out, he would still stay in our lives and we would go over to his house, play video games, like all this stuff. So he could have been like a good, role example, I guess you could say, like father,
yeah,
but
a,
then like,
a man figure in your life.
yeah,
Yeah,
something like that. And then like, as, because he was still your friend after everything. So
yeah.
what did, were you just in shock when he died? Like remind me how he died. I forget how he died.
Yeah, he had been sick. He hadn't been to the doctor,
Yeah.
but he had just what he thought was a really bad cold or whatever. He actually had pneumonia, and he was treating it himself with over-the-counter medicines.
Right.
And and he had done it for, I guess, for a week or so apparently, and ended up it affected his heart, and he just stopped breathing in
Wow.
his sleep. But it was crazy because we had been broken up for about a year.
Right.
But when I went to the showing and to the funeral,
Mm-hmm.
they had He had never told his parents that we broke up.
Yeah, I remember that now. That's crazy.
Yeah, so there were pictures of you and me, and and actually I was pregnant. Actually, I was pregnant with Charlie,
Wow.
so it was even longer than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and they did, but they weren't very close at all.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's why, but it was still. It was more of, I can't believe someone died like that. That's my age.
Right.
And really, if I would have like thinking how I think now, I would have dealt with that better with you because that was a loss for you.
Yeah.
And at the time, it didn't occur to me that it would be an issue for you.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, it was a crazy situation. Yeah, I was not
Yeah.
expecting that. And it makes sense because, thinking about who he was as a person compared to like who his parents were, cuz I would
Yeah.
go over there and like spend the night and they were really
Yeah.
nice and
They loved
cordial.
you.
Like they were just he didn't seem like he came from that family. So
No, he
like
didn't.
so that was the rift, I guess you could say there. That was very interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to bring that one up because that was kind of a loss that happened to you, later on in life while you were, having a child and seeing how that
Yeah.
would deal with, your mental health. Now I want to talk a little bit about, because you and I and the family deal with both of these things, anxiety and depression, sometimes at the same time, which is god awful.
So fun.
But I want to make sure to identify both like as their own separate things, because I feel like people group them into one situation and it's not that.
It's not. It's not at all. It's completely
Because
different.
I get really bad social anxiety, especially like when I don't need to put my mask on, basically. Like when I'm
Yeah.
going out to social situations for business affairs, like with Crazy Aunt, I mentally prepare myself and I'm like, okay, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. It's definitely gonna help if I have a little drink. That's like that always brings out the
Yeah.
lighter side. But so like anxiety is something that I feel like, it can be harbored by depression, but it's its own certain thing, because like the self-doubt part, I feel like
Hmm.
deals both with, depression and anxiety, because when I start to have self-doubt, that's when my anxiety starts to kick in.
Yeah.
And I start
You
to
start
feel
second
like,
guessing yourself.
yeah, literally every move I make is the wrong one, and I just feel like, you can't do anything right, and then which leads into depression. So I feel like anxiety is the first step, and then later down the line is when you hit your depression mark. Is it kind of like the same way for you?
I think so. I think so. I don't know that I could have identified what I feel is anxiety until after I had my breakdown,
Yeah,
because I was always somebody that it was nothing for me to yell at a cashier or a drive-through person or
it's
flip.
true.
I would flip out on anybody
Yeah,
over anything. It didn't take much.
yeah.
And it took breaking down like that to realize that my anger was actually anxiety.
Hmm.
I wasn't angry. I was super anxious.
Yeah,
And it wouldn't take anything. Like standing and waiting on somebody would make me so anxious. Like I'd have a ball in my throat, want to scream.
right.
And, but once I was able to identify it and figure out that's what it is, it's like, why are you anxious? Are we in a hurry?
Right, exactly.
This is going to take 3 minutes.
Yeah.
This is not, you know what I mean? Like, so you have these, I don't know, skills, I guess,
Yeah.
that you start to utilize,
Yeah,
and, so I can, it is different for me, but I didn't recognize it as anxiety forever,
yeah.
where you're an advantage because you know now that it is. And, I even feel like that with Pavi and Charlie, that they're so ahead of the game because you're dealing with your mental health now.
Right.
Try to think of how different my life would have been if I'd been able to deal with my anxiety and depression when I was 15.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's when I started experiencing it, because, we talked about when you first started, experiencing your stuff. I think that's when around like, it's really the teenage years. I feel like, because that's
It
when
is.
you start to figure out who you are as a person and start to like try different things and maybe get off of the narrow path and like all of these different things. So I feel like, yeah, it was definitely when it was the junior high stuff, when that parental figure took his step back and,
Yeah.
trying to find my place in the world. So I feel like that
Yeah.
definitely, caused a hindrance when it comes to this. And I feel like a big one for me too is time, like time management. If I feel like I'm not on my time
Oh,
management, that is a trigger. Okay,
huge.
like it's so bad. And it's like, the thing could be like 3 hours like away from the current time, and I'm like, okay, no, we need to, plan this all out. So it's and like getting off of that time regiment is so difficult. I guess it's all about prioritizing what's like what needs to be a timely factor and what doesn't need to be a timely factor.
Yes. Yeah. It's a struggle every day to not get anxious over the things that I'm not going to get done.
Yeah,
To not
exactly.
just, yeah.
The same, because like trying to do all the stuff with Crazy Aunt and trying to actually live just a personal life with my fiance Emily, and just trying to create memories and experiences, and yeah, just putting it all onto one. I'm like, okay, I need to be very time oriented, so if I don't knock this out, like it's not so yeah, it's just one
Yeah.
whole big thing. But then with therapy and after everything that I've gone through this past year, it was like being able to recognize, hey, there's also tomorrow. You can push this to tomorrow. It's all good.
Not a big deal if you
Yeah.
do this tomorrow.
Yeah. But
Yes, I understand.
I feel like anxiety is definitely the first like lead into
Yeah.
depression, because then that's when, you start to feel it. And I feel
All that
like,
self-doubt.
yeah, it's
And we are meaner to ourselves than anyone else, because that voice in your head, at least for me, she's kind of a bitch.
she
She's not
is.
very
Yeah,
nice to
he
me.
is for me too. Yeah.
So you kind of got to, remember that person's really not real.
Yeah.
She's just in there to, yeah. It's hard, but especially when you've been dealing with it your whole life.
Yeah, exactly. It's something very interesting, and I mean, it's something that we all deal with every day, and I think it's important to have the conversation, like I said, to be able to continue moving forward, and to transition into how we deal with all these things and how we continue to try to stabilize our day as much as possible, because it sometimes can be a little too overbearing and you feel like you do need some outside help, whether that be self-medicating or prescription medication or different mechanisms to try to just get yourself out of that space in your brain to be able to continue moving forward as just a natural human being, as we at least try to be. For me, it's... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, us being open and having these conversations is going to make you a better parent.
Yeah.
And your kids are going to really reap the rewards of that.
Yeah.
And then they will be, so I think that my generation and your generation are really, we're breaking those cycles.
I think so too.
Yes. I love it.
Yeah,
it makes me really proud of you.
Oh, thank you. It's a very special time, because I feel like this wasn't a thing 10 years ago. Not even like I feel like you started to bridge the gap 5 years ago, but we're in the peak time, like over this past 2 years, where it's a real thing and people are recognizing it on both sides of the aisle. Because I remember back in the day, like depending on what political stance you took, you decided whether or not it was a real thing that needed to be addressed or not. But we don't need to get into any political stuff, because that's not this type of podcast. But yeah, I feel like for me, trying to get out of that mental state of mind, exercising helps me a lot. Just going on a walk. I'm not even talking about like lifting weights or none of that bullshit. Like, I love podcasts right now, so like being able to just get outside and like just literally smell the grass, smell the trees, and feel like I'm just in a different place than where I actually am. I feel like that helps me a lot.
It helps so much.
Yeah, I know with you, like you were very, you pushed back on the medication part for a very long time. But then now you are able to, find your balance, because we were talking about last episode with Nicole Smith about bipolar, and how like medication is such a longevity type thing, to where you try different things that don't work, and then you try to find the right things. And I brought you up, and I know that it's been a journey and a process for you as well. But I feel like you found a good balance right now, right? To where you feel like you're on the proper stuff that make you still feel like a human.
I am. I don't feel. I've got anxiety medicine that doesn't feel like I've taken Vicodin it.
Right,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
Like, I don't need a Xanax. I need something that takes the anxiety away, but doesn't make me feel different.
Yeah.
And so it took a little while to find what works, but now I've got the pill I take for depression is good. The medicine I take for anxiety is good. I don't know if you guys are going into this or not, but medical marijuana is legal here.
Yeah.
And so, yes,
Gotta take advantage. I mean, it's all about trying to figure out what works for you, especially in a
it really
time
is.
where like it is so accepted. Because I
Yes.
know for me, I touched on it a little bit, but I am really big into CBD, and that helps
Yes.
my anxiety a lot. So
Yeah.
it's able to, just trying to figure out that balance to where, you are able to continue going forward and function as a human being to where you,
Yeah.
you don't feel on edge all day, every day. Cause that's the biggest thing.
Well, and I've learned because I've got chronic pain,
Hmm.
and my pain will make me anxious and
Yeah.
depressed. You know what I mean? Because it never stops. It's ongoing all the time between,
Right.
I've got bone fusions in my neck, and I've got bone spurs on my feet. And,
Right.
it's just like, because something not my hips, I swear, I think I need new ones. I
Oh
don't know
my
what's going on.
goodness.
but it helps all those things, but it does also help. It gives you a brighter outlook.
Right.
And it really depends on the strands. And what's great about it being
Yeah.
legal is you can go somewhere and they can go, this strand works well for this. Oh, you're having that? You want to try this. You're not just blindly going, okay, I'm going to smoke some weed to see if that helps.
Exactly.
Because you just don't know what you're getting. Yeah. And so, they test for everything. I mean, it's amazing that the work and the time that they put into it. I've really learned a lot since getting my card.
I love that.
It's helped more than I thought it would. Really, I've been able to cut back on my pain medicine. I take Neurontin, gabapentin
Hmm.
at night, and I've been able to cut back on that. So
All the good things, and
it's
it's
all
just
good
like
things.
it's just like medication, to where you have to
Yep,
figure out, your right dosage and all the good stuff.
yep,
It's
exactly. And you have to play with those things because you just don't know at first.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I've another form of anxiety that I find myself in, and I feel like you and Levi kind of both do this too, where you're like, you get anxious about going out and doing things with other people who don't live with you, but then once you get
Yes,
there, you're like, oh, this is actually a good time. Like
I
we're fine. Like there,
know. Me too.
it's the anticipation part. It's that
Yeah,
little space of like an hour within the event or the same day, and you're just like,
yeah,
oh my god, I feel like my chest is collapsing. But then once you get there,
yes.
you're like, this is actually really nice. I'm really enjoying this.
Now, do you feel like when you get back that you have to like recharge? Like, I want to go into a quiet room and no one talk to me.
Oh yeah,
I'm
for
just,
sure.
yeah.
Because I mean, you put a lot of that out there, and you're like, oh my
Yes,
gosh. But that, I
I've
mean,
used it all.
I told you about this, but like the past, it was either last month or something like that, where like every weekend for like a month we were doing something, and I'm like, oh my god, Emily, if you want to do something this weekend, please go ahead. But I am staying
I'm
home.
not going.
Like I'm not feeling it.
I understand. We
uh,
totally have that. Yeah.
that's so funny. But listen, thank you so much for doing this. I cannot like thank you enough. And I'm looking to get, the siblings maybe once they get more mature, and we, are able to handle full length conversations, because they got their own stuff going on, so that would be a fun thing. But
Oh, yes,
definitely
it would.
definitely Levi. Just trying to, like I said, it's a subgenre of the podcast, family sessions, that
Yes.
we can show the world that you can have these open conversations with your family, and you don't need to be scared.
Yes.
And there are
When it's so
instances.
important for men because
Yeah.
men just have been taught, boys don't cry, you need to toughen up, you need to, it's like when you think about it, when you're having a bad day, most men don't even say, well, who do you call when you have these feelings? They
Right.
don't have anybody.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so important for men and the women and the people around them to help them understand that no, you have feelings, or they're supposed to have feelings, and
Yeah.
it's okay to express them.
Yeah. Well, for me, I call my mom. Okay, I call my mom.
She sounds like a great gal.
She really is. I mean, especially this last like hour has really emplaced that into the world. So they all know. They all know.
Oh,
Well, listen, thank you so much. I love you. You're
I love
amazing.
you.
And
Oh,
I will talk to you soon. Okay.
All right, baby. Thank you.
No problem. Bye.
All right.
Oh my goodness. Now that right there, that was a conversation. And welcome to my life. Welcome to my family tree. All the good stuff. I'm super excited and terrified at the same time to put this out into the world because, it is very personal. It is very intimate, like I said at the very beginning. But I think it's something that people do need to see. And to be able to have that conversation more, it's so very important. And I mean, it's you are loved. You are loved with whatever you do, and you can find somebody who may not be your family that will treat you the exact same way. So it's very important, and just remember, everybody, everything's okay.